The battlefield was quiet now, too quiet. The smoke of burning ships curled into the alien sky, mixing with the bitter smell of blood and fire. Broken machines lay scattered across the ground, their metal still glowing with heat. Among the ruins, a lone human walked carefully, his boots crunching over shattered glass and strange alien stone. Commander Ethan was not here by choice. His ship had been hit in the chaos, forced down on this cursed moon. He needed shelter, water, maybe a way to call for rescue. But the silence around him was wrong, the kind of silence that feels heavy on the skin. It was the silence of death. He paused, scanning the broken structures. The ruins were strange, tall pillars of crystal and carved stone mixed with the wreckage of war machines. He did not belong here. No human did. Yet something pulled him deeper, step by step, as if fate itself wanted him to walk this path. Then he heard it. A sound so faint he almost thought it was the wind. A weak cry, a voice trembling with pain. He froze, his pulse racing. The sound came again. A plea, a broken word in a language he could not understand, but filled with desperation. Ethan moved quickly toward the sound. He pushed aside a collapsed beam, climbed over twisted metal, and then he saw her. Beneath the rubble of a fallen wall lay a figure, glowing faintly in the dim light. Her skin shimmered with pale silver, streaked with blood that sparkled like liquid light. Her hair spilled across the stone, glowing faint blue. Even near death, she was beautiful, otherworldly, untouchable. She was no ordinary alien. The crest on her armor told him everything. She was royalty, an alien princess. And she was dying. Her lips moved, whispering something weak. Her hand lifted only slightly before falling again. Ethan dropped to his knees, brushing away shards of crystal and bloodied stone. He pressed his fingers to her neck. A pulse, faint but there. Still alive. "Stay with me," he muttered, though he knew she could not understand him. Her eyelids fluttered weakly, golden eyes meeting his for a brief second. It was a look of both fear and hope. Then her head rolled to the side. Ethan looked around, panic rising. No medics, no allies, only ruins. He pulled his pack forward, searching fast. A human medkit, standard issue. But would it work on an alien? He didn't know. He hesitated, staring at her broken form. Her breathing was shallow, her chest barely rising. If he did nothing, she would die. If he used his human tools, he could kill her faster. But the sound of her cry still echoed in his mind. He couldn't walk away. With trembling hands, Ethan opened the kit. He sprayed a coagulant mist over the wounds. The liquid hissed on her silver skin, causing her body to shudder. Her breathing hitched, a weak gasp escaping her lips. "Easy, easy," Ethan whispered, though he knew she didn't understand. He pressed a patch to her side, sealing the bleeding gash. Her skin glowed faintly brighter, as if reacting to the human medicine. Ethan's heart pounded. Had he just saved her, or poisoned her? Her eyes opened again, this time wider, glowing gold meeting his human blue. There was pain in her gaze, but also something else, recognition. As if she understood what he had done. Her hand, trembling and weak, brushed against his arm, not pushing him away, but holding him there. Then her voice, faint and broken, escaped her lips. One word, filled with both command and plea. "Stay." Ethan's throat tightened. He had stumbled onto something far greater than survival. A dying alien princess, saved by human hands. And in that moment, with war-torn skies above and death all around, he realized one truth. This was not just chance. It was the beginning of something that would change his life forever. But even as hope flickered in her fading eyes, Ethan felt shadows moving. The silence around them was breaking. The sound of approaching steps, heavy and many. Voices shouted in alien tongue, closer and closer. He glanced down at the princess, her hand still clutching his arm, her blood still glowing on his fingers. And he knew the truth. Saving her life was only the first step. The real danger was coming. The sound of boots echoed through the ruins, heavy and sharp. Ethan crouched low beside the princess, his heart pounding as alien voices rose closer. He did not understand their words, but the tone was clear: anger, fear, command. He looked at the princess, still weak, her golden eyes flickering open and shut. Her hand clutched his arm again, her fingers like fragile fire. She whispered a word he could not catch, before sinking into unconsciousness once more. He had no time. Ethan slid his arms under her fragile body, surprised by her weight. She was taller than him, her form long and elegant, yet so light he feared she would break. Her silver blood stained his uniform as he pulled her free of the rubble. Every second counted. He lifted her onto his shoulder, ignoring the burning pain in his back. He had carried wounded soldiers before, but this was different. This was no comrade, no fellow human. This was an alien princess. The voices grew nearer, the ruins shaking with the march of armored feet. Ethan moved fast, darting between broken walls, searching for cover. The battlefield offered little safety, only twisted beams and shattered stone. His breath came hard, but he kept moving. Behind him, shouts rang out, metal scraping, weapons charging. They had seen him. The enemy, or perhaps her own people, he could not tell. Either way, they would not be gentle with a human carrying their royal blood. A beam of light cut through the haze, striking the wall just beside his head. The stone exploded in shards, ripping into his arm. He staggered but held her tighter, refusing to let go. His boots slipped on loose gravel as he ducked into a broken corridor. The princess stirred weakly, her soft voice whispering something that sounded like warning. Her blood still glowing, leaving a faint trail behind them. Ethan cursed under his breath. They could follow that trail easily. He had to move faster, had to think like a soldier. He pressed himself into the shadows, pressing his body against the cold wall. He adjusted the princess in his grip, cradling her as gently as a child. Her breathing rattled, each breath weaker than the last. He looked at her pale face, the strange beauty even in her broken state. He whispered softly, "You're not dying today, not while I can still fight." A loud crash shook the corridor, forcing him forward. He sprinted through the ruins, ducking beams of light that chased him like hunters. He reached an old chamber, its ceiling half collapsed. Inside, shards of crystal glowed faintly, strange alien symbols etched into the floor. He knelt quickly, laying her down on a patch of broken cloth. His hands worked fast, pulling out the medkit again. He knew the alien warriors were only moments away. But if he didn't act now, she would not survive long enough to be captured or saved. Her wounds were still bleeding, the human patch only slowing it. Her silver blood pulsed like molten stars, glowing brighter as her heart fought to keep going. Ethan tore another seal from the kit, this time pulling out a stimulant injector. It was meant for human soldiers in shock. He stared at it, his thumb trembling over the switch. He knew it could kill her, but doing nothing would mean the same. He took a deep breath, pressed the injector against her skin. The hiss filled the chamber as the liquid entered her veins. For a moment nothing happened. Then her body arched, her chest rising as if pulled by unseen hands. Her eyes snapped open, glowing gold, her breath ragged. Her voice came weak, trembling but clear. She spoke in her alien tongue, and though he could not understand, the way she looked at him said enough. She was alive. The pounding of armored boots filled the chamber entrance. Ethan spun around, pulling his sidearm. 5 warriors stormed in, their armor black, faces hidden beneath smooth helmets, weapons glowing. They froze when they saw him kneeling beside the princess. For a moment, silence. Then one of them shouted, dropping to one knee. The others followed, their weapons lowering. Ethan blinked in shock, unsure what had just happened. The princess stirred again, whispering in their language, her weak hand pointing to Ethan. The warriors rose, their eyes on him, their voices heavy with meaning. Though he did not know the words, he understood one thing. They were not here to kill him. They were here because of her. And now, because he had saved her, they would not let him leave so easily. Ethan felt the weight of their stares, the weight of fate itself pressing down on him. He had rescued a dying princess, but in doing so, he had bound himself to something far greater. Tradition, culture, a bond he could not yet see. And as the warriors lifted their voices in strange chants, one word repeated again and again, directed at him. A word he could not understand, but one that chilled his blood. For he knew, deep inside, it meant his life would never be the same again. The chamber was heavy with silence after the chants faded. Ethan stood frozen, his pistol still raised, but the alien warriors no longer aimed at him. Instead, they bowed their heads toward the princess, their movements sharp and full of respect. One of them spoke, his voice deep through the helmet. the words strange and rhythmic. The princess, weak but awake, answered with a single phrase, pointing once again to Ethan. The warriors shifted, their glowing eyes turning toward him. Their posture was not hostile, but there was something in their stance that felt heavier than weapons. Obligation, ritual, destiny. He could feel it pressing down on him even though he could not understand the language. He lowered his pistol slowly, his breath loud in the still chamber. "What do you want from me?" he muttered under his breath, though he knew they could not understand. The princess tried to sit up, her body trembling as she leaned against the broken wall. Ethan rushed forward, steadying her shoulders carefully. Her golden eyes flickered open, filled with pain, yet burning with fire. She whispered a word, almost forcing it out, her voice breaking. It sounded like a name, or maybe a title. She touched her chest, then touched his hand, then whispered again. The warriors nodded as if the meaning was clear. Ethan frowned, confusion biting at him. He looked at her pale face, at the silver blood still staining his hands. Then one of the warriors stepped forward, pulling off his helmet. His face was marked with strange glowing tattoos, eyes sharp as blades. He spoke slowly, his accent rough, but words in broken human tongue. "You saved her life." Ethan's pulse spiked. The warrior's eyes hardened, his voice carrying weight like judgment. "Now tradition you bond." Ethan blinked, his mind racing. Bond. The word echoed like a bell inside his head. Bond could mean anything: servant, prisoner, guardian, or worse. But by the way the warrior looked at him, it felt like something greater, something final. He shook his head, his voice sharp. "No, I didn't come here for this. I just saved her because she needed help." The princess touched his arm, her voice soft but insistent. She spoke her language, her eyes locking onto his. There was sorrow in them, but also determination. Ethan felt his chest tighten. She understood. Even if he refused, her people would not. The warriors were already spreading the word, their chants building again. They circled around, raising their weapons not at him but toward the ceiling, as if swearing an oath. Ethan's gut twisted. He realized then what it meant. Whoever saved their royal blood was bound by ancient tradition to join with them. Not as savior, not as servant, but as something deeper. Marriage. He shook his head violently. "This is insane," he whispered, his hands trembling as he looked at the princess. She watched him, silent, her lips pressed tight. Her eyes told him everything. This was not a choice, not for her, not for him. Her people would demand it. Her survival itself had sealed his fate. The warriors stepped aside, creating a path out of the chamber. One gestured with a firm nod, motioning for him to follow. Ethan helped the princess to her feet, her body weak and leaning against him. Her blood had stopped flowing thanks to his medicine, but her strength was still fading. She leaned on him heavily, her breath warm against his shoulder. Together they walked out into the ruined city, the warriors surrounding them like a shield. Outside, more soldiers waited, their armor glowing faint blue beneath the alien sky. When they saw her alive, a shout of triumph rose, voices echoing across the broken streets. Ethan felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. He was not just a human anymore, not just a stranger. He was the one who had touched their princess, who had dragged her from death's grip. And now every single one of them looked at him as if he had already become part of their world. The princess squeezed his hand weakly, her voice trembling as she whispered in broken human tongue. "Not your choice, tradition demand." Ethan's heart hammered. He had come here only to survive, to escape this war zone. But now he stood at the center of something far older and larger than himself. He had saved a life, but in doing so, he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Between life and death, hope and duty, freedom and bond. And as the alien crowd began to chant his name in their strange tongue, he realized one truth that made his blood run cold. His life was no longer his own. The night air carried the sound of drums, deep and steady. Ethan walked with the alien princess at his side, her weak form leaning against him as the warriors led them through the ruins toward a surviving structure that looked more like a temple than a fortress. The broken city glowed with strange fires, alien torches burning with blue light. Everywhere he looked, eyes followed him, soldiers, children, elders, all staring at the human who carried their dying royalty back from the edge of death. Inside the temple, The walls shimmered with crystals carved into patterns that told stories. Ethan could not read them, but the shapes showed crowns, warriors, blood, and joined hands. The princess was placed on a raised platform, her wounds tended to by alien healers who bowed deeply before touching her. Ethan stood nearby, restless, his hand never straying far from his sidearm. He felt trapped, not by walls, but by the weight of their expectation. The eldest warrior approached him, the one with the glowing tattoos. He spoke slowly, his voice firm. "You save her. You must stay, tradition demand." Ethan clenched his jaw, shaking his head. "I didn't come here to stay. I didn't come here to marry anyone. I just saved her life." The warrior stared at him without anger, only with the certainty of someone repeating a truth carved in stone. He said again, "You save her. You bond, no escape." The princess opened her eyes, her golden gaze heavy with exhaustion. She looked at Ethan, then at her people, then back at him. Her lips trembled as she spoke in broken human tongue. "They cannot change, tradition, even me." Her voice was soft, but carried sorrow. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This isn't fair. I never asked for this." Her eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. "You save me. You are bound. If you refuse, they will see shame. They will see dishonor. They will kill to protect law." Ethan's stomach twisted. He looked at her fragile form, the glow of her blood still faint under her skin. He had wanted only to help, but now his kindness had chained him. He turned toward the warriors, his voice sharp. "I will not be forced into your laws. I am human. My people don't live like this." His words echoed through the chamber, but the warriors did not move, their faces hard, their silence heavier than threats. The princess reached for his hand, her fingers cold. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "If you refuse, I am nothing. My throne is broken. My people will call me cursed. They will cast me out." Ethan froze, staring at her. She was not asking out of power, she was begging out of desperation. This was not only about tradition, it was about survival, hers and her people's. His breath came hard, his heart caught between two worlds. The temple doors opened, and more warriors entered, dragging in banners torn from the battlefield. They placed them before the princess, kneeling low, chanting words Ethan could not understand. But their tone was clear. They were already declaring her life had been saved by him. They were already declaring that fate had chosen them together. Ethan wanted to scream, to fight, to break free. But the sight of her, weak, trembling, her people's hope and honor resting entirely on her survival, tied his hands tighter than chains. He whispered harshly under his breath, "Damn it, I didn't ask for this." Yet when she looked at him, her golden eyes shimmering with fragile hope, something inside him softened. She was not a monster, not a stranger now. She was someone he had risked everything to save. And even if he refused, even if he fought his way out, the memory of those eyes would never leave him. The elder warrior stepped forward again, raising a crystal blade. He held it high, the light catching across its surface. He pointed it at Ethan, then lowered it toward the princess, then back at Ethan again. The meaning was simple, final. A choice must be made. Ethan's chest tightened, his breath uneven. He could walk away, fight his way out, maybe even escape. Or he could take the step that would forever bind him to a world he did not understand. The princess whispered again, her voice so weak he barely heard it. "Not duty, only choice, but if you walk away, I die in shame." Her words struck like blades. Ethan's fists clenched, his mind screaming against the weight of tradition and the pull of freedom. He had always believed in choice, in fighting for his own path. But now his path was tangled with hers. The drums outside grew louder, the chants rising until they shook the very walls of the temple. The people waited, the warriors stood still, the princess stared at him with desperate hope. And Ethan, caught between two worlds, realized that no matter what he chose, his life would never be his own again. The days that followed felt like a cage of silence around Ethan. He was not chained, but the eyes of the alien warriors followed him everywhere. Every step he took, every breath he drew, was washed as though he already belonged to them. The princess, Liara, that was her name, he finally learned, was kept inside the temple, her body still weak, her wounds healing slowly under the care of alien healers. Ethan was allowed to stay close, and though he hated the weight of their tradition pressing on him, he could not bring himself to leave her side. At first, their words were broken, fragments of human tongue mixed with her alien language. She struggled, her voice soft, yet she insisted on speaking to him. She pointed at objects, naming them in her tongue, waiting for him to answer in his. Her laughter, weak but real, came when he stumbled, when he mispronounced the sharp clicks of her people's speech. In turn, he told her stories of Earth, of oceans and forests, of skies filled with blue instead of fire. Her eyes would widen with wonder, her lips parting in disbelief. She called Earth a dream world, as though the idea of such a place was too beautiful to exist. Each day, the bond grew, not because of tradition, but because of the small pieces of themselves they offered each other. Ethan found himself watching her smile, rare and fleeting, yet powerful. She was not just a princess bound by laws. She was a person, fragile, stubborn, and stronger than she looked. And though he fought against it, he felt the pull of something deeper inside him. Not duty, not command, but choice. But peace never lasted long in a world carved by war. One night, as the alien fires burned outside the temple, a shadow fell over the walls. A warrior rushed in, shouting words filled with urgency, his armor scratched and bloodied. Ethan turned sharply, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. The princess stiffened, her golden eyes narrowing as she listened. The warrior dropped to one knee, his voice shaking as he spoke to her. Liara translated in broken human tongue, her voice tight. "Rivals, come. They say you are weak. They say human not worthy." Ethan's jaw clenched, his blood running cold. Of course there would be others who refused this bond. To them, he was not savior. He was invader, an outsider who had touched what was sacred. Liara's voice trembled. "They come to kill you, and me." The drums outside changed, beating faster, louder, like a warning in the dark. Ethan moved closer to her, his voice firm. "Then we fight." She shook her head weakly, her hand clutching his sleeve. "No, if you fight, and lose they prove right." Her eyes glowed with something fierce, something that reminded Ethan that she was not only fragile. She was still royalty, still fire. "I fight too," she whispered. The walls of the temple shook with the clash of metal, the roar of warriors. Ethan drew his weapon, standing before Liara as shadows moved through the smoke. The rival faction stormed inside, their armor dark red, their blades gleaming with light. They shouted curses at him, their voices filled with rage. To them, he was nothing but corruption of tradition, an insult carved into their blood. Ethan fought hard, his training carrying him through the chaos. His weapon fired, his fist struck, but he was only one man. Then Liara stood, her body weak but her spirit burning. She raised a staff given by her people, light flaring at its tip. Her voice rose, shouting words in her tongue, words filled with authority and defiance. The air seemed to tremble as her people rallied to her. For the first time, Ethan saw not just a wounded princess, but a leader. She fought at his side, striking down those who came too close, saving him more than once. When the dust settled, bodies lay across the temple floor, smoke curling into the night sky. Ethan stood breathless, his chest heaving, his arms stained with blood not his own. Beside him, Liara leaned heavily against her staff, her lips trembling but her eyes bright. The warriors who had doubted her now looked at her with awe, their chants no longer curses but cries of loyalty. And when they turned their eyes toward Ethan, it was no longer with suspicion. Some bowed their heads, others whispered a word he could not understand. But he felt it, the shift. They were beginning to see him not as an intruder, but as something chosen. Liara turned to him, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "They see now, you are not only duty, you are strength." Her golden eyes locked with his, and for a moment the noise of the world faded. In that silence, Ethan felt the truth strike him deeper than any blade. He was no longer fighting just to survive. He was fighting for her. The temple still smelled of smoke and blood. The floor was stained with the clash of battle, broken weapons and shattered banners scattered across the stone. Ethan stood in the center, his body aching, his breath heavy, but his spirit unbroken. Liara leaned against her staff, her face pale, yet her eyes bright, like golden fire. Her people surrounded them, chanting her name, chanting his too, though he did not know the meaning. But peace was never more than a breath away from being broken. Before the chants could fade, horns sounded outside the walls, deep and hollow. The sound rolled across the ruins like thunder, shaking the very stones. The elder warrior with glowing tattoos rushed forward, his face dark with dread. He spoke quickly to Liara, his words sharp. She stiffened, her hand tightening around her staff. Ethan stepped closer, his voice hard. "What is it?" Liara's lips trembled as she forced the words in broken human tongue. "Not only rivals. Now the warlord comes." Ethan's heart clenched. He didn't know who the warlord was, but the way her voice cracked told him everything. This was no ordinary rival. This was power, authority, a storm walking on two legs. The doors of the temple shook as something heavy struck against them. The warriors rushed to defend, but the great gates burst open, splinters of crystal flying like glass. Through the smoke walked a figure clad in black armor lined with crimson light, taller and broader than any other. His mask glowed with burning red eyes, his voice deep as thunder when he spoke. The language was alien, but the hatred was universal. Liara whispered, her breath trembling. "He says you, human, unworthy. He will end bond by blood." The warlord raised his massive blade, its edge humming with energy. The air itself seemed to shiver with its power. The alien warriors loyal to Liara shouted, raising their weapons, but the warlord's forces filled the streets outside, a tide of red armor. They were outnumbered, surrounded. Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon. He had fought wars before, but this was different. This was not his world, not his people, yet somehow everything that mattered to him now stood behind him. Liara's life, her people's hope, their fragile bond. He couldn't turn away, not anymore. The battle erupted with a roar. Warriors clashed in the streets. The temple shook with the thunder of blades and the scream of alien fire. Ethan fought with desperate strength, his training carrying him through every strike encounter. He ducked under blades, fired his weapon, moved with the precision of survival. But no matter how many fell, more came, a tide without end. Liara fought too, her staff blazing with bursts of golden light. She moved with grace despite her weakened body, striking down enemies with fire in her eyes. More than once, she saved Ethan, her staff cutting down warriors that would have ended him. And more than once, he pulled her away from blades meant for her heart. They fought back to back, human and alien, two lives bound by something deeper than tradition. The warriors around them began to chant even as they fought, voices rising above the storm. Then the warlord himself stepped forward, his massive blade tearing through 3 of Liara's guards in a single swing. He pointed the blade at Ethan, his voice booming. Liara gasped, translating with horror. "He says, fight him, or we both die." Ethan's pulse thundered. He was exhausted, bleeding, his weapon almost empty. But he saw the truth in her eyes. If he did not face this monster, everything they had fought for would burn. He stepped forward, his voice low. "Then I fight." Liara's hand caught his arm, her golden eyes wide. "If you fight, you die." Ethan looked at her, at the desperation and fear in her gaze. He whispered back, "If I don't fight, we both die." Her lips trembled, her voice breaking. "Not duty, please choice." For a moment, the battlefield faded, and only her voice remained. She was not asking him to fight for tradition, not asking him to fight for her people. She was asking him to fight for her, for the bond that had grown between them. The warlord roared, his blade glowing brighter, the ground shaking beneath his steps. Ethan raised his weapon, standing tall despite the weight of exhaustion. He was one human against a titan of another world. But he had already chosen. Not because of law, not because of demand, but because when he looked at Liara, he saw something worth more than his own freedom. Something worth fighting for. Something worth dying for. The clash came like thunder, steel and fire colliding in the heart of the temple. And as sparks lit the dark and chants filled the air, Ethan knew that his next choice would decide not only his fate, but the fate of a princess, a people, and maybe even the galaxy. The temple walls shook with every strike of the warlord's blade. Ethan's arms burned with the weight of each block. His breath came ragged, sweat and blood stinging his eyes. The warlord was stronger, faster, fueled by rage and the power of tradition. Every swing was meant to crush, to break, to end. But Ethan held on, his body screaming, yet his spirit refusing to fall. Liara watched, her heart tearing with every clash. Her people surrounded the battle, their chants loud, their eyes fixed on the human who dared to stand against a giant. Some shouted for him, others cried for the warlord, the council torn between old law and the proof standing before them. Ethan stumbled, the warlord's blade tearing into his side, blood spilling. The crowd gasped, but Ethan pushed forward, slamming his shoulder into the giant, firing his weapon point-blank into his armor. The blast shook the warlord, forcing him back a step. It was not victory, but it was enough. The people roared, half in shock, half in awe. Ethan raised his weapon again, blood dripping from his lips, his voice hoarse but filled with fire. I didn't come here for your laws. I didn't come here to be owned, but I will never walk away from her. The warlord bellowed with rage, charging again, his blade crashing down with the force of thunder. Ethan rolled aside, pain ripping through his wound, but he pushed back to his feet. Liara cried out, her voice breaking. Enough, stop. Her staff blazed with golden fire, her weak body trembling as light poured from her hands. She shouted words in her tongue, her voice echoing like command carved from stone. The council raised their arms, silencing the warriors, silencing the chants. The warlord froze, his blade inches from Ethan's neck. The elder warrior stepped forward, his voice booming. Traditions say, who save royal blood must bond. He pointed to Ethan, his glowing tattoos burning brighter. This human, save her not once, but again and again. The crowd shifted, voices murmuring, the weight of the truth pressing heavy. Even the warlord lowered his blade slowly, his breath harsh, his rage trembling but restrained. Ethan stood tall despite his pain, his chest heaving, his voice rough. I don't believe in chains. I don't believe in being forced, but I do believe in choice. He turned to Liara, his eyes meeting hers. Her golden gaze shimmered with tears, her lips trembling. He stepped closer, his voice low but carrying through the silence. My choice is you. The temple erupted with sound, chants rising like a storm. Some cheered, some cried, but all bowed as Liara's staff glowed brighter. She reached out, her hand shaking as it touched his. Her voice soft but strong. My choice is you too. The golden fire wrapped around their hands, binding them not with chains of law, but with light born of their own will. The council bowed, the warriors dropped to one knee. Even the warlord lowered his head, acknowledging the bond sealed before them. Ethan felt the warmth of her hand in his, her breath close, her eyes shining with something more than duty. It was not tradition that tied them now, not law, not fear. It was the bond they had built in fire and blood, in trust and choice. For the first time since he crashed on this cursed moon, he felt not trapped, but free. Free because he had chosen, free because she had too. But freedom always came with weight. As the chants filled the air, the elder warrior spoke again, his tone heavy. Human, now you are bound to her. Bound to throne. Bound to people. Galaxy will not forgive. Galaxy will not forget. Ethan tightened his grip on Liara's hand, his voice calm. Then let the galaxy come. Liara leaned against him, her strength fragile, but her spirit unbreakable. Together they stood before their people, their bond sealed, their fate decided. The war was not over, the dangers not gone. But from that moment on, they were no longer strangers, no longer prisoner and savior, no longer duty and law. They were one. And as the alien stars burned above, the human and the princess knew the truth. This was not the end. It was only the beginning.